All right, jump into the very first question from Tyler. It says, Jimmy G pass for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm assuming you mean against Seattle. I think he needs to for them to go ahead and win this football game. We talked about Tevin Coleman possibly coming back earlier. Again, probably slim chances he's out there. So we'll see what McKinnon and Hasty are able to do. But I think throwing for victory is the way to do this. And how do you do this, right? They're probably going to double George Kittle, which means if Reed's out there, look for Jordan Reed in the red zone. And then Brandon Ayuk needs to have a breakout game. Seattle is weak on the secondary. No Carlos Dunlop to start on Sunday because he can't play till week 9 due to the COVID protocol. So I think this needs to be a big Jimmy G game. Can they win without Jimmy G playing well? Yes, they did that all last year and have done it again this year. But do they need him against Seattle? Yes, I think that they do. 300 yards and 3 touchdowns would be huge. I hope that it actually happens. Next question here comes from a Criminal Justice who says, "Could the Niners trade for Stephon Gilmore?" So here's the deal with Gilmore. New England could be looking to shop him. The problem is that if you trade for Stephon Gilmore, you're giving up a lot. I mean, that's kind of just a guarantee because he's a great cornerback. But then you got to pay him. And paying him is the issue because he's going to want to be paid like the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League, probably ahead of what Jalen Ramsey got last year, which was a ton of money. Would I like Stephon Gilmore? Yes. But will they trade for him? I don't see it happening. Kyle Shanahan has already said he wants to keep as many draft picks as possible. Probably take multiple draft picks to go ahead and trade for Stephon Gilmore. I'd be all for it as well. Speaking of trades, Rohit has a question here. It says, trade for Slant Boy or Julio. So the problem with Julio Jones, again, is the same problem you have with trading for any of these other older, aging wide receivers like an A.J. Green or I guess Stephon Gilmore. They're all over the age of 30. Now, Julio's a great player, but I think the city of Atlanta would not give up Julio Jones for anything less than a first-round draft pick. And with what Julio Jones has done the past couple of years, being unable to get in the end zone, great player, probably best in the league. I'm not going to deny that. I think the cost is a little bit too high. I would stay clear of Julio Jones. Plus, I kind of work and live in Atlanta, and let me tell you, the word on the street is they will not be trading Julio Jones by the deadline, and I feel very confident that my insight on that is pretty darn accurate. Now, doesn't mean San Francisco won't make any sort of trade at the deadline, maybe a minor one, pick up a pass rusher, who knows. If you think they'll make a trade for the deadline, type Y down below for yes, type N down below for no. Again, I don't see San Francisco making a trade. Definitely not a blockbuster one, but if they wanted to make a smaller one, then sure, go ahead. I'm all for it. And we'll talk about it, obviously, on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, whenever that news would come in, probably Monday or Tuesday since the trade deadline is there on November. Type Y down below for yes, though. Type N down below for no. Next question here is a super chat. There you go, right to the front goes David Vioma. David, I appreciate you every single week. What up, my man? Hope you're doing well. Better duo when healthy, Sherman and Witherspoon or Verrett and E-Man? Okay, so this is actually a very good question because Verrett and E-Man, Manuel Mosley, Jason Verrett looked really good last week. The problem is it was against Cam Newton, who is having his worst season as a quarterback in the National Football League. Cam Newton is washed. I mean, he is done. So last week doesn't tell me a lot. Sherman and Witherspoon, I think, are a good combination, although I'll argue, I think the combination of Sherman and Verrett would be the perfect combination in San Francisco. So I kind of changed this around a little bit. I think that once Richard Sherman comes back, which he keeps getting delayed, it's not going to be this week, might not be next week, who knows when he actually comes back. But when he does, I think it'll be Verrett and Sherman out there as your 2 starting cornerbacks, but they can always rotate guys in. Like if Verrett starts struggling, boom, E-Man's in there. If E-Man starts struggling, boom, Witherspoon's in there. They have 4 starting caliber cornerbacks, and so they can play any of them. I think your best duo there is Richard Sherman and Emmanuel Mosley. Wyatt Tierney, I think that's how you say your last name. Adam Thielen trade. I've seen no news on the Adam Thielen front, but it would technically make sense because the Vikings have to be potentially in sell mode. Now, they're probably the best losing team in the NFL, right? They have one win, 2 wins. They've been awful this year, but they have an absolutely ton of talent. But I've seen no news on Adam Thielen. I'd be all for it because Thielen's a great player, but I just don't see it happening because we've heard 0 news, and normally you hear there's smoke where there's fire. Mamba says, can Sherman play safety when he comes back? No, he cannot play safety when he comes back. The transition is a little bit harder than people think. Now, Sherman's a smart player, one of the better secondary minds in the National Football League. If anyone could do it, it's him. But moving him mid-season after an injury, which, of course, he's been dealing with the past couple of weeks, doesn't make a lot of sense. Ward and Tart are going to be back sooner rather than later, so just ride with them. I do not see Sherman moving to safety at all. They want him to be a cornerback, and he wants to play cornerback as well. Dylan says, we target a deep threat wide receiver. I mean, listen, here's the problem with a deep threat wide receiver. The ones that you could get out there, the Julio Joneses of the world, the A.J. Greens of the world, the Adam Thielens of the world, they're aging, and they're expensive. So you're giving up big-time draft capital, plus having to pay them for the next 4 years, and they might not be good. They might start slowly kind of, going downhill a little bit. So should they? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think this team could obviously use a deep threat at wide receiver, but maybe you just wait for Debo to come back in a couple of weeks and hope that Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, and the rest of the gang can be healthy and play well. If Mostert comes back healthy, Debo comes back healthy, this offense, trust me, it will be just fine. Of course, if there is a trade at the trade deadline, like we keep saying, make sure you're subbed, because the day it happens, I go right in front of the camera and I give you the full update on it. Or one of us here at Chat Sports does, if it's super late at night, whatever the deal is. If they make a trade, we cover it here, so make sure you're subbed, but also hit the notification bell, because the notification bell literally bings your phone as soon as we drop a video. Mine literally told me Thomas Mott is live on the 49ers Report because I'm subbed to my own channel, so it's fantastic. It works really, really well. Hit that big red subscribe button. That way you guys are subbed, and hit the notification bell as well. Bandit has a question here. He says, trade Kwon and Ford, and for what? Like, what would we get for Kwon Alexander and D Ford? Well, the problem is you can't trade D Ford right now because he has been injured, and so has Kwon Alexander. Any player who's injured is virtually ineligible to be traded at the NFL trade deadline. Teams won't do it, and a lot of times if they're on IR, like D Ford is, the NFL has a rule. They will not simply allow it. So what could they get? I think you'd get a third or a fourth for Ford, probably a fourth or a fifth for Alexander, but neither of these guys can be traded right now because they're both banged up and both dealing with injuries. And then Kwon Alexander, like, let's say Kwon's cleared and ready to play. I don't think he's played well enough to warrant a team wanting to go ahead and make a trade for him. David with another super chat. David, and of course, welcome, David. Appreciate it. We lose to Seattle. Are we going to be buyers or sellers? I don't think that's going to make a big difference. I don't think the 49ers have a lot of players that are selling, like seller work, right? There aren't a lot of players that you go, yeah, the 49ers should trade this guy. They have young wide receivers, young running backs, young linebackers. Like, they feel very good about where they're at. Unless they want to sell a cornerback, the only position I see if someone called for Mosley or Witherspoon. But even if they lose, with 7 seeds being in the NFL playoffs right now, so they can still go on and make it to the postseason. One more loss is not going to do them in. And speaking of that game on Sunday, though, if you guys want to bet on that game, you can do it with our friends at BetUS. Chatsports.com/49bet. Promo code Niners125. Let me say that again. Chatsports.com/49bet is your link to go. Put a deposit bonus down. Use our promo code Niners125, and then bet on San Francisco and win some money. Currently, Seattle is 3-point favorites. This, of course, depending on when you're watching, can change. But I think 3-point underdogs to one of the best teams in the NFC tells you that a lot of people are starting to trust San Francisco based on what they've seen the past couple of weeks. Again, the defense is playing better. Garoppolo was fantastic last week. Don't worry about the 2 interceptions. They really weren't his fault. The first one was, the second one wasn't. But if they start getting healthy, they can really start to roll here. And I'm pretty excited about, obviously, what the 49ers can do. So bet on them with our friends at BetUS. I like this question from Kevin. It's a tough one, though. Hasty or McKinnon for fantasy? So I don't have McKinnon on my fantasy team, but I picked up Hasty. But I think with the chance of Coleman playing this week, you got to wait till Sunday. If Coleman is out, you can play either one. If Coleman does not play, you can literally play either one, either Hasty or McKinnon. Wouldn't matter because they're both going to share touches. If Coleman is in, then you don't have Coleman, you have Hasty or McKinnon, you play McKinnon because Hasty gets bumped down to running back number 3. So that would be my advice. Wait for Sunday morning. See if Coleman's going to play. Maybe follow me on Twitter at Real Thomas Mott because I'll, of course, retweet whenever we find out the news. And if Coleman plays, play McKinnon. If Coleman doesn't play, then play either McKinnon or Hasty. Maybe throw in Hasty in there because I think they're going to try to give him some touches there on Sunday. Next question here comes from DK. DK says, are there any takers for Dante Pettis? I doubt it. I mean, who wants a guy who's been a healthy scratch the past couple of weeks? Does Pettis have a catch this year? I don't think Dante Pettis has a catch this year. He might have 1 or 2 absolute bust. I mean, this is a guy who will for sure be cut in the offseason. So who's going to want to trade for him when you just get him in the offseason? It's not like Dante Pettis is going to come to your football team and solve all your problems. It's just not going to happen. So with that being said, I do not see any sort of trade happening for Dante Pettis. It's just extremely unlikely. And if there was a team dumb enough, they would probably give up a 6th or a 7th round draft pick. I mean, like, there's nothing. He's been bad this year, right? He's been terrible. Goodness gracious. Matthew says we need to draft a defensive tackle. No, we do not. I think listen, if Bosa was in there, it would be a top 5 defensive line. If Bosa and Ford were in there, best D-line in football because Kinlaw's played well. Armstead's struggling, but you take the double teams away from Armstead when Bosa and Ford are back out there. So no, they don't need to draft somebody because both Bosa and Ford will be back in 2022 or 2021, right? Next year, 2021, whatever it is. You get my point, right? They don't need to draft anybody because the D-line will be fine whenever healthy. They're struggling right now, but that's just what happens. Follow me on Twitter, again, at Real Thomas Mott down below there. You see that? That's my official Twitter handle, as we, of course, will give you guys full updates on the 49ers. I normally do on my Twitter handle. My mom says, this is probably not my mom, it says your mom. Maybe it's your mom, my mom. Super chat, should we trade for Watson? Like Deshaun Watson? Yeah, I mean, if Houston it wanted to, but they don't. Like, they've been absolutely adamant they're not going to trade for Deshaun Watson. So, no, I do not see that happening at all. Yeah, that's very, very unlikely. Name a player, though, you want San Francisco to trade for at the trade deadline. Let me know who that is down below right now in the comments section. If there was a player you wanted them to get, let me know who it is down below.